Hi everyone, and welcome to Preparing to Work with Images on JSTOR. We hope this webinar addresses questions you may have about working with images on JSTOR, and if you are a longtime Artstor user, we will be sharing information about how to fully integrate content you discover on JSTOR with your existing image groups that are now folders in your JSTOR workspace. We are expecting our primary audience today to be Artstor users, but of course, all JSTOR users who want to know more about working with images are welcome. My name is Elizabeth Behrens, and I am a product education lead on the partner and user education team. I'm joined today by Paul Cuneo, the Tier 2 lead in our partner and user support team, and Dana Howard, our senior education and outreach manager in partner and user education. Before I hand it off to Dana, I want to let you know that this presentation is being recorded. It will be available on YouTube, and when we post it, we will include a table of contents in the description beneath the video, which you can click to access different points of the recorded webinar. All attendees will also receive the recording as a GoToMeeting link in a follow-up email. Please note, after you exit the webinar, a survey will appear, and we would really appreciate any feedback you can share with us. If you don't have time to answer the survey immediately, it will also be emailed to you in about an hour after the webinar. Now I will pass the microphone over to Dana.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and sorry about that flashing screen. JSTOR, a digital library, is part of Ithaca, a not-for-profit organization with a mission to help improve access to knowledge and education worldwide. Our work bringing Artstor onto JSTOR is aligned with our mission in that it preserves the collection of collections that is Artstor, while supporting the humanities and visual literacy in a sustainable and affordable way. Here is our agenda for today. First, I want to be really clear on why we're doing this session and what we hope you take away from it. Then I want to explain how we have evolved the login experience to make it easier for you and your students. Going right into our demonstration, I'll point out the parts of your workspace and show you how to take a former Artstor image group and step-by-step rearrange the images, search for more images, present and share that folder. Finally, we'll briefly go over a couple of resources in your handout. Then we will bring Paul and Elizabeth back to help me address questions or revisit any part of the demonstration. Our main goal is to help you comfortably navigate JSTOR as an image resource. You may know of Artstor as a standalone platform, but we've now integrated it onto JSTOR, and I wanted to make sure that you're aware that you're all aware that we are retiring the Artstor platform in August, so in about 4 months. Librarians told us that the end of summer was the best time to do this, and so that has been our plan. Hopefully, attending this training will get you started on JSTOR and give you the next 4 months to get comfortable working with images on JSTOR. On a personal note, I'll share that I was a faculty Artstor user from 2002 until starting to work for Artstor in 2011, when I continued to use it daily. It was initially hard to consider the Artstor platform retiring, and my muscle memory was definitely getting in the way during those first few months on JSTOR. But now that the Artstor content, and I think a more intuitive set of tools is on JSTOR, going back to the Artstor platform feels odd to me. I've come to realize that my love of Artstor is more about the content than the platform. Moreover, seeing how much farther the reach of Artstor on JSTOR is across campuses and at less cost to the institutions is really exciting for me as a visual literacy advocate. Several of you took the time to add your questions when we registered, and they have informed this presentation. So many wanted to know what it was going to be like to work with your existing image groups on JSTOR. So we will begin in the workspace, the location of your former image groups. For the sake of time, and so as not to overwhelm, there's some features that I will point out to you, but not thoroughly explain during the demo. A section in your handout, and Elizabeth is adding that to the question box or chat box, depending on which way you joined. A section in your handout contains links to support articles that fully document what I mention here. Time permitting, I'm also happy to cover anything that caught your eye when we are in the Q&A section. My job is to give you enough of the landscape of this platform to get you started in realizing its possibilities for your teaching and your learning. But do know that we will have another training in August and continue to create materials to support Artstor on JSTOR. To help you with this transition from the Artstor platform to Artstor on JSTOR, we copied all of your image groups to your own workspace in early February. We want you to be comfortable working with your images on the JSTOR platform so that you can jump right in prepping for the fall. If you've made any changes to your image groups since February, you can quickly make a new copy of any of those groups with our copy tool on JSTOR. The link is jstor.org/copy groups, but it is also in your handout that Elizabeth has shared. So after you've copied your last group, you can just use JSTOR. You don't need to return to the Artstor platform. The workspace is the equivalent of my groups on the Artstor platform. As the JSTOR platform has evolved over the last 3 years to meet the needs of those who teach with images, the feedback of our users has been quite valuable in setting our course. We still want that. We hope that as you begin to use JSTOR regularly, you continue to share your joys and your frustrations with us at support@jstor.org, also linked in your handout. JSTOR has become much easier to use from anywhere and on any device. On Artstor, when you wanted to download an image, you had to log in no matter what. But if you are on campus or accessing JSTOR through your library's portal, you can download any item on JSTOR without logging in with your personal account. This is handy when you want to grab a couple of images to add to your slide deck at the last minutes before class, something I used to always have to do. If you have an Artstor account, you also have a JSTOR account. So just log in with your username or email and password to use your workspace. If you log in from on campus through your library's login page, you will automatically be matched or paired to your institution. After that, you have remote access that lasts 365 days and renews each time you log in from on campus. In fact, if you've logged into the Artstor platform from campus within the last 365 days, you can just go to jstor.org and log in from anywhere. Your login is already paired or matched to your account. Personal accounts are free to you and your students. They enable access to your personal workspace and facilitate ease of access through this account pairing. If you teach at more than one institution, and I love this part, I love that we can do this, as long as they are both at Artstor, as long as they both have Artstor, you are paired to each institution and you can share links to content with whichever student body you need to. And I'll demonstrate that in a minute because my login is to more than one. Now, I just said, as long as both institutions have Artstor. The name Artstor is not going away. It is a collection of curated collections now on the JSTOR platform that your institution subscribes to. Even if your institution does not subscribe to any traditional Artstor content, your Artstor subscription gives you access to Artstor on JSTOR. There's also open and free primary and secondary source content on JSTOR that you will also be able to use in teaching and learning. You will know that you're logged in when you see the name of your school or institution at the top of the page, number 1 in this slide, and your own name below that, number 2 in this slide. Okay, we're going to go directly to the platform now and do a workflow that involves updating a workspace folder that was an image group on Artstor in advance of teaching that content. So I'm going to turn my camera off in order to make it possible for you to see as much of my screen as you can. And let me make sure that I'm big enough. Yeah, there we go. So here we are on the home page of JSTOR. The first thing I want to point out is the search bar appears at the top of every page on JSTOR. And there is a tab that says images, and you can search directly for images in this way. It's not a big deal if you choose all content because you can toggle over to images really easily. Now that I've told you about the search bar, I'm telling you I'm not going to use it yet because we're going to go to the workspace. Before doing that, I'm going to scroll down to the bottom of the screen. At the bottom of every screen on JSTOR, you will see the support site link, as well as a link to our LibGuides. These are two resources that I think are very helpful to you, and so I wanted to make sure that you saw that you could get to them from here. Back up at the top of the page, I'm going to click Login, and this is going to allow me to log into my workspace. If I chose just workspace without logging in, I get this kind of nice page that tells me about it. I also get the chat box show up here to help me in case I need help logging in. And then I can go to login. And this will take me directly to my workspace because I clicked on workspace before. I can log in with Google or Microsoft if my librarian has enabled that at my institution, the login to JSTOR through Google or Microsoft. But I'm going to just log in the old-fashioned way with my username and password. And our team shares this login, and so you see it says Education Team at JSTOR. Yours will have your name right here. And then it's telling me that my institution is JSTOR Education. I'm directly in my workspace right now. If I wanted to, I could do a search. Let me give you a tour of the workspace to begin with. First, I can actually search the workspace. And if I search the workspace, I'll give you a demo of that in just a minute. I can also look at all of the folders that I have. Some of these are from when I used them on Artstor, and some I made directly on JSTOR. And these folders are viewable for me in gallery view. Let me close the chat box here. It's a really handy way to get help from our support team. Or I can look at this in list view without the images. Artstor users have your image groups placed here in these folders. There are image groups that are now called folders in gallery view because you work primarily with images. I also have a second tab here as an Artstor user. It is my uploaded items tab, and we'll go there in a minute. Here on in my JSTOR workspace, I have the ability to create a folder. Let me show you this interface right away so you can understand how valuable this is. I'm going to create a folder called Monet. And now my folder here called Monet, let me sort these by last modified so the Monet folder comes up front. I can now add content to this folder. The way to add content, the way to add a folder to a subfolder is to click on that checkbox, and after that I can just click anywhere. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add these two Monet folders. This one had been an image group and this one is some text. And I'm going to add them to Monet. So I'm going to click here, Move, Monet, and now those two folders are subfolders of Monet. The reason I wanted to share this with you is that as you find your Artstor image groups on JSTOR, you may want to organize them as subfolders of a parent folder like this, Now this doesn't have any images because I don't have any images in the parent folder. I could add them if I'd like, but this tells me that I've got a parent folder with 2 items, 2 subfolders in it. Now, these 3 vertical dots allow me to do a number of things to these folders without even going to the individual folders. For example, I could rename a folder. So I could call this Impressionism and put a bunch of Impressionist content in it. I can add a description of the folder. Over here, let me just point out, this is a folder description, which I could look at more of if I'd like. I can move, like I just showed you. I can duplicate a folder. So that's handy if, say, you're teaching a 101 course, but you're also going to be teaching an upper division course, and some of that stuff from the 101 lecture will work in your upper division lecture, so you just copy it and then add to it for your upper division content. I can export to PowerPoint, PDF, or zip, and I can share a link. We'll talk about link sharing more in a minute because it's really handy. I can also delete a folder. So if, as you're going through exploring your new image groups on Artstor that are now folders, and you see that we've copied over content you really don't want access to anymore, all you need to do is start clicking on them, and you can choose this delete button. I'm not going to do that, but that's something that you can do where you can easily thin out what we've added to your JSTOR workspace for you. Now, let me take you over to the second tab. The second tab is in beta format, and we've made this for Artstor users. It is your, it would have been, as an Artstor user, I have items I'm sorry, as an Artstor user, I have access to items I personally have uploaded so that I can use them alongside the content I find on JSTOR. If you used personal collections on Artstor, click on this tab and you will find your personal collections are now here in this uploaded item space. This is about a week old. It's a brand new feature in beta form. And I want to point out these flags. You'll see these flags throughout JSTOR underneath an item. This one is not in a folder, and so the flag isn't dark. This one is in a folder, and the flag is dark. I could add it to another folder. In fact, I could add several copies to a folder, but it's telling me this is already integrated into my folder. If you have personal collection items that you integrated into your Artstor image groups, you are going to find them in the folders, in their folders equivalent on JSTOR already. Another thing is that you can begin to upload new content onto the JSTOR platform. You can select up to 10 files at a time through drag and drop, and you can, or drag and drop, and you have a limit of 10 megabytes. And currently we're only supporting image format, JPEG and PNG format. But each image can be 10 megabytes in size, and we are not limiting how many you can upload at this time. So we hope you can make use of this and let us know how you like it. It's a brand new feature called Uploaded Items, and it is a second tab in your workspace. Okay, now I want to search my workspace because what I'm trying to do here is find all of my content about Gothic, because I'm going to teach a unit on Gothic. So I want to see what I already have on Gothic. And so I'm doing a search, and it's showing me my 3 Gothic folders. And this search searches the title of either a folder or an individual item. So in this case, I have some journal articles about Gothic revival, where the word Gothic is in the title. And then I have some Gothic revival images as well. These are in my Gothic revival folder, but they're showing up here in the search results because the search result is holistic. And yes, I have 2 images of the Central Park Bridge because I'm showing it in 2 different places in that folder. I am going to open this Notre Dame folder now. The things that I showed you earlier about the 3 vertical dots, they're here as well with the folder open. I have those same functionalities, and I can present directly now from here or export it to PowerPoint, PDF, or zip. And I could create subfolders if I'd like. Each of the items also has the 3 vertical dots. And this one actually has a note. It's telling me that this is an image of Notre Dame during the restoration. And here's another note. These are notes that I wrote, and you can easily add a note right here. If I wanted to share this folder, I can go to my share link. One of the things that's very valuable about being able to share a folder is that you don't have to have the folder complete before you share it. So, for example, that Monet folder, I could continue to add subfolders to it, and that link, that parent folder link, is still the link that will get you to all those subfolders and anything new that I've added. If you rearrange items within a folder, the same link will work. You don't have to get the link again. So I can use this link. I'm going to share this with 2 of my institutions. If you only teach at one institution, you'll only see one here. And at any point, I can turn off link sharing. But I can copy this link and I can put it in my learning management system. I can put that in the course so that my students can get to every week's images just from that one link. And when I go to copy my LMS for the next semester or the next year, that same link will still be valid as long as I haven't turned off link sharing. So the share link is incredibly helpful, I think, when you are trying to help students work with content you've created. And if you have content you want just for yourself, just copy your folder and then add to it or delete from it as needed to make your own working folder. Now, finally going to do a search because this is kind of a thin group. This folder doesn't have a lot of content in it yet. I'm going to go to images here, and I'm going to do my search. And I should spell things correctly because that always helps. Okay. So there's a lot of content. This is just image content or panoramas. Looking in the sidebar here, I see images and panorama. And this is content on JSTOR, including Artstor and JSTOR content. I can look at these and see if any of these items I already have in my workspace because that flag would be dark. I could always add them again, but I could do this. I could also pretty quickly just add things like I know I need this ground plan and I know I need this ground plan. And I can quickly add things as I go. I know I'm going to want this one, and I go up here and I click save. And I can save it to my Notre Dame folder. It's the last one I was working with, so it shows up right here. I have continuous scroll here with images on JSTOR, so you don't have to go page by page by page, but this is a lot to scroll through for anyone. So let's go to the sidebar and see how we can maybe narrow the search results. First, I think I'd like to choose image resolution. When I narrow to just things that are greater than 10 megapixels, I know that they're going to project well in my classroom. So I'm going to choose that, and that narrows pretty dramatically what I've got here. As I scroll down, I also have the option to narrow to just Artstor collections. I could choose some of the contributed content as well, but I'm going to narrow it to Artstor collections. And if there's any that I didn't want to include, I could just uncheck that box. Now notice that I have that 10 megapixel choice and the Artstor choice are up there. I can easily remove that whenever I would like. So now as I scroll through, I have kind of confidence that I've got the Artstor curated content, and I have content that is a high resolution image. This one I've already saved. You can see that it's got the save to workspace. The flag is dark. This one I haven't. I'm going to choose that and save it. Now I want to point out something. If I don't choose my folder, it will just save to the workspace in general, which is fine. And then I can move it to my folder later if I'd like. So in Artstor, you only have image groups, but in JSTOR, you can have folders and individual items not in folders. Now, I want to show you a kind of a neat feature called compare mode. So I'm going to open up this drawing of Notre Dame. And I'm going to use compare mode to assess if this is something that I'm really going to want to include in my folder. So I'm up here to compare. I could save from here, by the way. I'm up here to compare, and I can compare it to this item from my search result, or I can go here to workspace. So you see, if I'm in search, it will go to search result first. If I'm in workspace, it'll go to workspace first, which is handy. And so here's my Gothic folder. I can open that up, and let me pull this item up. I just had to click anywhere on it and it will pull it up. I could put up to 4 items here. And now I can look at the 2 of them and I can make a decision like, do I really want to add this one or not? I'm going to go ahead and make the decision to add it, but I want to add a close-up view, maybe right here. So I'm going to click here, save to my workspace, and I'm choosing save current zoom and save. And that is going to be saved to my workspace. I did it in general. Let's do it again. Save current zoom. And here I'm saving it to my folder. And then I could also go out and save the whole thing if I want. Go again and saving this to my folder. So using compare mode, you can check and see if an item is something that you, if an item is something that you really want to use in a presentation. You can, of course, also use compare mode with present mode in your workspace. Now, I know I'm throwing a lot at you and I promised I wouldn't, but it's actually can get really fun to do this. As I'm cruising through, I don't want to forget that I also wanted to look at those virtual reality panoramas. So I'm going to remove this limit and then add panorama here. The panoramas now, if you use them on Artstor, you know how valuable they are in teaching. They now are very overtly visually panoramas so that you know what you're looking at. And as you mouse through, you can see what each section of there's 40 for this one, so there's a lot. Central portal, let's do the south portal. Of course, panoramas are incredibly valuable because they allow you to give the students a sense of what it's like to actually be at the site. And so you can speak to students in some detail about the sculpture program. You can talk about the relationship between the jam figures and the tympanum, things like that in a panorama. So I'm going to save this to my Gothic folder. And now I'm going to just check my folder. So I went directly to it from the save link. And as you can see, items I just added are right here. So I want to put this panorama over here next to this facade. And I'm saying, yes, I want to replace my custom order because I want a new custom order. So I put my panorama next to my facade. And I also have, since I saved them twice, they're both here. And I also have the ability to go into any of these works and pick a new one. I'm sorry, not pick a new one, but continue to explore. So one of the really valuable ways to look at more content is to open up one of your items in your image group or folder. And I want to show you at the bottom, this is a really cool image from Magnum Photo of these guys looking for lapidary marks. If I scroll down, here are related items also about the restoration. So I could move around and look at each of these and in a kind of a browse format, browsing by related items. And you can arrow through this way as well. Here's another guy looking for lapidary marks. And then, of course, I could always look at the metadata here for the item, copy it, and then just search for lapidary marks on JSTOR and find both text and image items related to this particular, to those medieval marks that were made on cathedrals and other places. So I was in my workspace folder, and from an item in my workspace folder, I continued to browse just by related items. Going back to my workspace. And here's my cool Gothic folder beginning with the painting and then the detail. And I'm going to go into present mode from here. When you're in present mode, you can arrow through your folder this way. The bottom of the screen, I can arrow from item to item, and I can compare. It will immediately take me to this workspace folder to compare to other things in this folder. But it can also take me to, I could also compare it to search results if I'd like. And so I could use my high resolution image here. It's probably not the best comparison, but you're getting the idea. I can also add several images to compare. So for example, if I want to also have this virtual reality panorama, but maybe I don't want this detail, I can have that in compare mode as well. So this can be very handy if you want to speak live to classes and let students have discussion and bring up the images as needed in discussion. It works kind of like the old OIV. Some of you use the old offline image viewer in that way to facilitate greater discussion. And this can work in that way as well. So this is your compare mode in action. But as I reorder my content, I can also export to PowerPoint, PDF, or zip. Now, to give us time to be able to answer questions, I am going to show you the export to PDF. So you can see what it looks like. I think this is really handy because it gives students a quick sheet, a quick slide list of what they're going to see in class. This is the export to PDF. And I also have already, to save time, done an export to PowerPoint of a previous version of this deck. And as you can see, like with Artstor, you have the metadata at the bottom. And if you want to move things side by side, you can do that by copying an image and pasting it to the other side if you'd like. So you've got the same functionality that you had on Artstor with PowerPoint on JSTOR. You also have the functionality to export to zip. And the other thing I want to point out is, do you see this says Notre Dame, Paris, and this one says detail of, so that you have a sense that you're looking at a detailed image. And by the way, this detail really works if your working with illuminated manuscripts, where you can really get into the marginalia and download all that to PowerPoint pretty quickly. So I want to take us to a couple of resources to help you know that you've got things you can rely on. The first thing I want to point out is we do have this LibGuide that is it's linked in your slide deck, and it has tips and links to the support page that is pertinent to the content, as well as videos. Something I think you may want to do is subscribe to our YouTube channel. And as we add more content to these different playlists, here we've got a playlist Artstor on JSTOR, you'll be able to be alerted of new content. We're going to be adding new content and keeping materials up to date as we work through until the fall. And as JSTOR changes and grows and develops, we'll continue to add content to help you in teaching and learning. Now, the next thing I want to show you is this is the page that is considered our welcome page for you on JSTOR. And I want to point out a couple parts of the page. The feature comparison chart is very handy because it's got hot links that will take you to each kind of activity that you're used to doing in Artstor. There's also an FRQ section and a bit on image groups and other content. I am going to turn on my webcam and invite my colleagues to, and turn things over to Elizabeth to start our Q&A session.
Great, thank you, Dana. So this ends our formal presentation, but you are of course invited to stay for questions. And as I said earlier, all attendees will receive a follow-up survey after the webinar closes. And we also want to remind you to contact support@jstor.org if you have any feedback at all on the platform changes as you experience them. That feedback gets recorded and forwarded to the right team for further investigation. We have one question that came in so far, but please feel free to add any questions you may have to the questions box in your GoTo panel on your screen. Anything that we might not get to will be addressed in our follow-up email along with a link to this recording. So for the question that we received is about image groups and presentation mode. So a difference between Artstor and JSTOR for presentation mode, when you look at full screen presentation mode on an image in a work group, the left and right arrows are not there as they were in Artstor. So instead, there's a need to use the presentation mode, which automatically sends you to the start of the image group. So if the user exits out of the presentation and then wants to pick up where they left off, it takes them back to the beginning instead of where they were. So do we have plans to give full screen views and image groups the same presentation or functionality?
Yeah, so I can take that one. I think this is an issue that we've heard a lot of feedback around. We've gotten a lot of good feedback around the presentation mode in general over the last couple months. And the angle that we're approaching this particular problem from is more along the lines of improving the presentation mode rather than changing what happens if you jump into an image from the workspace itself. So specifically, our teams are currently looking into adding the ability to resume your presentation from where you left off. If you do have, that workflow where you need to jump out of the presentation and click around to some different tabs. So I do not have a specific date for when we are planning to add that functionality or exactly a commitment on what that improvement will specifically look like, but I know it's something that our teams are actively looking into at the moment based on the good and detailed specific feedback we've received from instructors about their workflows and the limitations they're running into here. So yes, improvements are coming. We are continually looking to improve the workspace teaching tools, and just another shout out to please continue providing us with that good specific feedback so that we can continue to iterate on the tools that we have in this way.
Great, thanks. Questions are coming in much quicker now. So a couple more things about workspace folders and image groups. So for image group links, when a link is shared to an image group, can the users add, let me rephrase this. Can the users only view the content, or can they add images as well to the image group?
I'd love to take that one because I'm showing you the page in the LibGuide where we explain how that works. It's really kind of nice because you're sharing the folder with a colleague or a friend, and they can copy it. And if they make any additions to the folder, you can look at their latest version as well, even after you've copied it. And you actually have a little notice, and I hope you can see this on the screen, a folder shared by Meg. And you have a little notice that it was shared. And then you can make one and share it back with her. You know, you can add to it and then make it your own and add to it and share it back with her. So this should facilitate some collaboration, especially between librarians and faculty as they build slide decks. So the working with shared content appears in the LibGuide that I mentioned that is also in your handout.
Okay, a question about, another one about workspace folders. If you lose access to JSTOR, will you still have access to your workspace folders? If not, is there a way that those materials can be exported?
So your personal JSTOR account is not going to be closed if you say graduate or leave the institution that you currently work at. So the account itself and the workspace folders will continue to exist, but there is a possibility that if you lose sort of your affiliation with that institution, there may be certain items within those folders that you are no longer able to access. And in terms of the ability to export those materials, we have that little export dropdown right in the middle there. That is a helpful starting point for that. You can export to PowerPoint, PDF, or zip format for the folders that you create.
Great. A question about using advanced search and the interface for advanced search. There's a comment about the location of the submit button being at the very bottom of the screen that you have to scroll down to, and if that could possibly be changed. And also if the cursor, it would be helpful if the cursor could remain in the search bar so you don't have to re-click in the search bar for the next search. That's really helpful feedback.
I really love that feedback. Thank you.
I think there's just one thing I'd chime in there real quick as a little bit of a life hack. You can press the Enter key after you have filled out the fields that you have, and that submit button way down at the bottom is going to be automatically highlighted.
You mean you don't have to scroll down to hit submit?
Exactly. You can just hit the Enter key after you've filled out the fields that you want to in advanced search, and it should run the search.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Paul.
Magic. Okay, a question just came in about whether this meeting will be recorded and shared. So I just want to confirm that yes, everyone's going to be receiving a link to the recorded meeting after. Yes, Dana, you have a comment about that.
Oh, I mean, I love the life hack that Paul gave us in the meantime, but also the feedback that the button is kind of inaccessible is important.
Yeah.
I think because the refine results sidebar, I haven't been using advanced search that much because there's so much you can do with the refine results sidebar. that I hadn't really noticed the cumbersome nature of that.
Okay, another question about fees here. Once Artstor and JSTOR platforms merge, how is the payment change for the two databases? Will it be one annual subscription fee, or do we have info that we can refer people to about fee changes?
So we do have, not in the specific landing page that you mentioned, the Artstor one, but the variation of that that's called Artstor Move. We have a variation that covers pricing, billing, and access under the FAQ. I don't know if you're able to pull that up, but the short answer is that Artstor and JSTOR billing are going to remain separate, mainly because we sort of recognize that there has been sort of an established habit for many institutions of the Artstor subscription being covered by a different department than the JSTOR subscription was. So I'd recommend you take a look at this jstor.org/Artstor Move page, scroll down to the FAQ, and specifically look for that pricing, billing, and access header there. This should answer most of the questions you might have about the billing changes.
Great, thanks. A question potentially about shared collections or contributed collections in the Artstor Digital Library is for those institutions that have collections that have been shared to Artstor or JSTOR, can you add to them? And I think this depends, of course, on the collection type. I don't know if Paul or Dana wants to respond to this.
So it may depend on what you mean by how you're contributing it to JSTOR. So if you have if your institution is publishing a collection via the forum product, you know, your catalogers are maintaining that collection themselves. We have been working with everybody to, you know, get them up to speed on publishing to JSTOR, and absolutely new content can continue to be added and published via forum to those community collections. Dana, I don't know if you have anything to add to that. I'm not sure if I...
No, that's Elizabeth's actually our expert on that. So I think if you agree with Paul, then we're great.
Yeah, I think that yes, that's fine. Another question just came in about if you are logged into JSTOR and do not see any folders, does that mean that they have not yet been migrated and this user still needs to access them through Artstor?
So we ran a migration for everyone's Artstor groups to the JSTOR workspace back in February. So if you are currently logged into JSTOR and you are not seeing anything in your workspace, you may need to reach out to support and we can help you figure out what might be going on there. It's in some cases, honestly, it just turns out that you might have slightly different email addresses on JSTOR versus Artstor, and you've logged into one versus the other. But if something did go awry with the migration there, we can look into that for you.
We do have some more time. If you have any more questions, please feel free to jump in and enter them in the questions box. Nothing else yet.
I just wanted to call out, I'm seeing a number of follow-ups with good specific feedback, not necessarily questions we'd want to share with the whole group or anything, but we will definitely pass that on to the relevant teams regarding the various, you know, presentation mode and search improvement suggestions.
Yeah, I think our platform teams are very interested in hearing the user experience. We've been doing a lot with one another and with librarians, but end users particularly, we would love to hear people, well, librarians as well, of course, but people that use Artstor every day, It's going to feel funny at first, but beyond the feeling funny, what's working and what's not working, the platform teams are eager to know that, and that we funnel it all through support so that we can make sure we're keeping track of everything and everyone knows what everyone's seeing. So please feel free to reach out with that. Paul's team has it all organized so that we can hear from you.
I'll just comment while we're waiting to see if more questions come in. The question about the adding to collections, if you scroll down to the bottom of the handout, there are some resources about shared collections. So if you're not familiar with what those are, there's links to some helpful web pages about open collections on JSTOR and shared collections.
And we did get a question here about publishers. If you want to publish something, if you want to publish through like a journal or a book that is on JSTOR, you need to contact that publisher. And the way to find that is in the metadata. When you open up the item, you will see the name of the publisher and be able to access that publisher's contact information. JSTOR doesn't have anything to do with submissions like that of books or journals.
Yes, I'm seeing that question as well in terms of permissions to, seems like maybe the question is about potentially republishing like a specific image in a book, and Dana is right on the money that we generally do not have any copyright in the content that we host. So we are not the ones who can give you the go-ahead there. We do have a page called Getting Permissions for Content on JSTOR on the support site at support.jstor.org, which may be a helpful starting point if you're approaching it from that angle.
And I've also just pulled up an example of the terms in copyright, which tells you who you can contact for permission and credit.
No other questions yet.
Okay, we have a couple more minutes. Thank you. We're getting some positive feedback that for the most part, they're enjoying the new platform, which is nice. As I said before, it's a learning curve, but once you get it, you're like, oh, this is so easy. Hopefully you'll feel that way as well. And what's wonderful is when you send students to Artstor, you're sending them to the place where they can also get their scholarly content that you want them to read. So it gives them more of a one-stop shop for content that you approve of and want to point them to.
Thank you for the nice comments that are coming in. If anyone has any other questions, please feel free to jump in.
Oh yeah, it's gratifying. People are saying that they love working on Workspace, so that's nice. I want to point out that the handout will also be linked in the email that will come out afterwards, and that will come in a few days with the recording. But you're also going to get a survey, right, Elizabeth? The survey will either pop up or come in email?
The survey comes in a follow-up email 1 hour after the webinar closes. But the survey will also pop up on your screen immediately after you close the webinar. But if you can't respond to it immediately, don't worry, you'll get an email with a link to it.
And not to be repetitive, but just to drive home the message, if you have any questions that come to mind only after you have already left the meeting on the staircase on the way out, please just email support@jstor.org. That is your address for feedback and specific problems you might be having with the workspace or the teaching tools.
Okay, we're at 1:55. So that was when we'd said we would end, so I think we're okay to log off.
Yeah, I think we're good. Thank you so much, everyone. And you will be hearing from us shortly with the email and survey.
Have a lovely day, folks.